The State Capture Commission says that it will be submitting the final report to the President electronically by tomorrow evening. Large sums of money are changing hands at the Ankoli cattle auction at the President's Palapala farm, but reportedly there's no cash involved. It's been almost a week since little Kayaletu Magadla fell down a manhole in Soweto, and an intensive search for him is still underway in the underground water systems. The Ministers of Transport and Home Affairs have paid a visit to the OR Tambo International Airport and promised to clamp down on illegal immigration. As we heard earlier, the final volume of the State Capture Report is to be sent to the President electronically by tomorrow evening. This comes as the handover, due to take place on June 15th, was delayed. Let's speak now to Advocate Paul Hoffman from Accountability Now. Advocate Hoffman, good afternoon. After numerous extensions, the State Capture Report, well, at least the final chapter, is due to be delivered tomorrow.
Yes, and it's very long overdue. Remember, we were going to get the entire report by September last year. We're now in the middle of June, and in fact, the final deadline set at the choice of the Commission for the 15th has come and gone without the final tranche of the report. But you know, we've waited so long for it that waiting a day or two extra to get it just right is probably worth the wait.
Now, do we read anything into these delays? I mean, obviously there have been numerous of them, 7, I think, at the last count.
Yes, I think what one can reasonably infer from the delays is that state capture turned out to be a lot more complex and a lot more widespread than was initially anticipated when the job started. Remember, the public protector, Tuli Madonsela, who asked for this commission of inquiry, thought that it could be done in 6 months. Well, that was in October 2016, and we're now June 2022. So that gives you an idea of how much bigger the job was. And I'd much rather that the State Capture Commission gets the job right, even if it does take a couple of extra days, than that it rushes to finality and pushes out the final tranche of the report with errors in it, because that not only devalues the work of the Commission, but it also may give disgruntled persons the opportunity of taking the findings against them on review. So let's hope that the mistake that was made in the first tranche, where the majority judgment in the Glenister case was regarded as a minority judgment, a very big difference in law, well, that has been drawn attention, the attention of the evidence leaders has been drawn to that error, and it is hoped that it will be corrected in what we are going to see next week, and the President is going to see on Sunday night.
Advocate Hoffman, it begs the question that what other errors could be found in the report. Now, I'd imagine that, there are multiple volumes of the report that have been released, but just how much work goes into verification of actual facts?
Yes, I know that the Chief Justice is supported by a team of evidence leaders and investigators, and that the report is compiled by the Chief Justice on the basis of summaries of evidence that are made available to him by the team of evidence leaders. So I would think that errors in that process, given the prominence and the seniority of the lawyers that are working on the State Capture Commission, is pretty low. I think it was an unfortunate eclipse that the Glenister majority judgment was described as a minority judgment, and that is one of those that can be corrected. It may make a difference to the recommendations that are made in the final report if the correction is brought about.
Well, I'd imagine that there must be some conversations going on in the various corridors about what we can expect from the fifth installment. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm pretty confident that the practice of cadre deployment, or some people like to say cadre deployment, in the public administration, state-owned enterprises, Chapter 9 institutions, and even the judiciary on occasion, is going to come in for severe criticism in the final report, and that the report is going to recommend that that practice be abolished. As you know, the DA is litigating the subject and is also piloting a private member's bill through Parliament on the subject of ending cadre deployment, which is in fact one of the causes of state capture happening in the Zuma years. I'm also hoping that the Chief Justice will see his way clear to making a recommendation that the current Hawks NPA split, with the Hawks doing the investigation of corruption and the NPA doing the prosecution of corruption, be reunited in a single independent body, which we have called the Chapter 9 Integrity Commission. That is the body that would do what the Scorpions used to do, which is the effective and efficient countering of corruption, and that they would be able to do it within the framework of Chapter 9, which would make them less vulnerable to closure, which is the fate that the Scorpions were doomed to, because they were willing to take on powerful people who had it within their gift to close the Scorpions, dissolve them by a simple majority in Parliament. A Chapter 9 institution can only be dissolved by a 2/3 majority in Parliament. So it would give the Chapter 9 Integrity Commission a better chance of discharging the mandate of investigating and prosecuting serious corruption cases.
Now, Advocate Hoffman, we've seen some reaction, or some action rather, from the NPA following the last four parts, at least in the recent past. Do you expect for the NPA to keep this up, to gain momentum as far as chasing up certainly leads, if you will, or direction that's come through from the report?
Now, I'm afraid that the NPA has been gutted. That's not my verb. That's a verb that has been used by former Constitutional Court Justice Richard Goldstone. The gutting of the NPA during the state capture process has left it in tatters and has left it in a situation where it is simply unable to recruit the sort of expertise that is required in terms of the law to deal with serious corruption. The Constitutional Court said as long ago as 2011 that the criteria for corruption busting are specialization, proper training so that you can keep ahead of the corrupt, an independent institution that is not dominated by the executive or interfered with by politicians, that has guaranteed resources and secure tenure of office. Now, those criteria are absent both in the Hawks, who do the investigation, and in the NPA, which, as we all know, is promising that sometime in the next 6 months, 9 cases will start. The problem with that is that the first 3 tranches of the State Capture Commission report identify 1,438 people who need to be prosecuted for corruption or fraud or embezzlement arising out of their involvement in state capture. So if you do the maths, it's going to take them 80 years to catch up if they individually prosecute the 1,438 identified persons, and there's still more to be identified. And even if they do so in groups of 8, it's going to take 10 years, and that is far too long. The creation of an institution that is properly equipped to do what needs to be done will result in a lot of the loot of state capture being recovered for the benefit of the people of South Africa.
Advocate Hoffman, is there political will, though, to set up the Chapter 9 institution?
I believe that there is. I can tell you and your viewers that at the beginning of this month, the Constitutional Review Committee in Parliament has unanimously decided to invite Accountability Now to make submissions, to make a comprehensive presentation on the subject of introducing a Chapter 9 anti-corruption body. I can also tell you that in August 2020, the National Executive Committee of the ANC resolved to instruct the Cabinet urgently to establish, and now listen to this carefully, a permanent, independent, standalone anti-corruption body that is specialized to deal with the corrupt among us. Now, those criteria match the criteria that have been laid down by the Constitutional Court in binding terms. Unfortunately, the Cabinet has not done anything about it since the NEC resolution nearly 2 years ago. But the parliamentarians are at least waking up and smelling the coffee. So to answer your question in a word, yes, the political will to do so is appearing. The DA and the IFP are both in favor of a Chapter 9 anti-corruption body, and it needs to be created by the will of Parliament, not by the will of Cabinet. Parliament is the representatives of the people of South Africa, and Parliament has the ability to pass new laws to deal with the circumstances in which we find ourselves post-state capture, which are very different circumstances to those which obtained when the Scorpions were closed down in 2009. It's up to Parliament to see to oversight is their job. Their oversight of the implementation of the decision that was made in the Glenister litigation back in 2011 is their passport to carrying out the legislative process that will bring onto the Constitution and into the statute book the enabling legislation and the constitutional amendment that will give us a suitable body that is able to get on top of serious corruption in South Africa and prevent the slide towards failed statehood on which we seem to be running at the moment.
Now, to close off our conversation, advocates, I'll take you back to the Chapter 9 anti-corruption body that you talked about, and certainly the submission that you've been invited or will be invited to make to Parliament. Talk to us very quickly about some of the key highlights or key elements of those submissions, if you're able to.
Yes, certainly. The STIRS criteria, the specialized, trained, independent, properly resourced and secure body is incorporated in the draft that we have provided to Parliament. And Parliament is going to have to decide the cutoff point at which serious corruption kicks in. We've suggested loot to the value of 5 million rand is a suitable point at which you engage with the specialized anti-corruption body, and smaller cases below 5 million rand can be dealt with by the Hawks and the NPA in the normal course. and so that the specialized body will really spend its time and energy investigating and prosecuting the serious cases of corruption and of raking back the 1 to 2 trillion rand of loot that has been removed from the treasury and the state-owned enterprises that were looted during the process of state capture, and return that money to the public purse so that the money can be used to implement the Constitution, to guarantee and deliver the rights of the human rights of the population, so that we do indeed enjoy that elusive better life for all that the Constitution promises us.
Accountability Now's advocate Paul Hoffman, thank you for your time this afternoon. And on the eve of the final submission, in fact, Chapter 5 of the State Capture Report, he was unbundling for us what we can expect.